Pop star Katy Perry has come out swinging again. Her 14-year trademark dispute with an Aussie designer who happens to share the same name has taken another turn.
I am Katy Perry, the real Katy Perry.
The other Katy reportedly has a net worth of more than 500 million Australian dollars.
You know, this whole case has been built on a David and Goliath. Blood, sweat and tears have gone through building this business, and now today I'm going to lose it all.
What would you like to say to pop star Katy Perry?
Katy Perry went to war with Katy Perry over the name Katy Perry, and the results were disastrous for one of them. Today I'd like to tell you a tale about wanting to have your cake and eat it too. This is the story of how Katy Perry fucked around and found out. By the way, there are two Katy Perrys in this story. I'm not sure that I made that totally clear. I think this might get confusing quite quickly. Before I can tell you which Katy did what, I have to introduce you to the two main characters, I guess you could say, in this predicament. But before I do that, I'm just going to cover a few things that seem to plague viewers' minds as they watch my videos. One, I'm from New Zealand. I know my accent's a bit of an acquired taste. It's okay. Two, the room is dark. I'm so sorry. It's winter in New Zealand. I have the lights on. This is just what it looks like. For three, we yap on this channel. I'm not this all-knowing genius. I'm just a girl. So if you do have further knowledge you'd like to share, any corrections you'd like to make, or literally anything at all that you'd like to say, comment them, please. Your contributions make this video better and funner. So thank you. And also, sorry if I sound a little hoarse, if I start saying nay and brr. I can't help it. As I was filming my Avril Lavigne conspiracy video, my throat just started killing. And I was like, oh, I've yapped too hard. But no, I think I had a cold. I came down with a cold. And then my best guess, I got laryngitis. I just completely lost my voice. I was talking like this. Which is totally not suspicious at all. And I definitely don't think that Avril Lavigne's team poisoned my ear to stop me from spreading the truth that she was replaced by Melissa. I definitely don't think that. Anyway, now that we're done with that whole spiel, we can get into the introduction. And first off, we have, of course, Katy Perry. No, not that one. Yeah, the one we know. Yeah. Now, I'm not going to do this big, long, deep dive into the life and trials of Katy Perry. I'm not even going to try to cover everything, but I do want to take some time to tell you bits and pieces just because it's interesting. It just sets the stage a little bit. You want to know the person you're talking to or about. Now, obviously, most of us know that Katy Perry is an American pop star. I think that's pretty common knowledge, but less of us might know that she actually began her singing career as the 16-year-old Christian rock artist Katherine Hudson. This was back in 2001, so another lifetime ago, but the Christian rock, it was what she was raised to know and love by her parents. And this was her father, Maurice Hudson, and her mother, Mary Perry. Mary Perry was her maiden name. What a fun name. Was Dr. Seuss her father? Maybe. I can't confirm. I did not look that up. But either way, Maurice and Mary. That sounds like I'm reading you a kid's book with these names. Katy was born in 1984 to Murray and Mary, all right? And my understanding is that they both worked as freelance Pentecostal pastors and evangelical ministers, which I guess are not very lucrative careers. It sounds like at times they barely generated enough income for the family to get by, but they've been doing it for decades. Honestly, they just live and breathe their religion. I think they still do anyway. So whether the struggle was worth it or not, I don't think that was ever a question for them. I think it was just, yeah, this is what we're doing. It's a sacrifice that they were more than willing to make. And Maurice, Mary, and their three children, they also sort of traveled around and just lived wherever the Lord called them. So I guess that meant that Katy's life as a young person was not particularly stable. But at home, wherever that home may have been at the time, Katy's parents ran a very tight ship. So Katy grew up in a strict environment where she was sometimes homeschooled and sometimes attended religious schools. But either way, she was always encouraged to learn a lot about the word of Jesus Christ and the terror of Satan, and a little about everything else. That's not as important, really. And Katy has spoken about how she felt like she didn't really have a childhood, so to speak, because a typical kiddie freedoms and luxuries were just not afforded to her. She couldn't read books other than the Bible. She wasn't allowed to consume pop culture media. She couldn't attend dances or undergo sex ed even. She couldn't call deviled eggs. No, they were angeled eggs, actually. So Katy was this attention seeking middle child with a penchant for asking why. but her childhood didn't really allow her to indulge in all of her thoughts and her queries, I guess you could say. But regardless of how she feels about her childhood, Katy has always vocally respected her parents a lot. In 2011, Katy spoke to Vanity Fair about her relationship with her parents, how that was all panning out when she was, you know, a pop star. She said, we coexist. I don't try to change them anymore, and I don't think they try to change me. We agree to disagree. They're excited about my success. They're happy that things are going well for their 3 children and that they're not on drugs or in prison. And Mary confirmed, I guess Mary was there for this interview maybe, and she confirmed that she was proud of Katy's success. She actually said, the Lord told us when I was pregnant with her that she would do this. So thank goodness, or quite literally, I guess, thank the Lord that Mary had time to prepare herself for the day that Katy would sell her soul to Hollywood. Because otherwise I don't know if they'd be getting along as well as they do. But as far as, you know, like actually selling her soul to Hollywood, Katy had to get to a place where she was able to do like her career in music had to start somewhere, and honestly it did not get off to a sprint. Remember, she tried to be a religious singer when she was a teen, and about her efforts at that time, Katy told the Rolling Stone, my gospel career was going nowhere. They went on to share that she started to write songs about different things, love and boys on her guitar, and they said these weren't gospel songs. And about that, sort of about breaking out of the chains of her childhood, Katy said letting go was a process. Meeting gay people or Jewish people and realizing that they were fine was a big part of it. She said, once I stopped being chaperoned and I realized that I had a choice in life, I was like, wow, there are a lot of choices. I began to become a sponge for all that I missed, she said. The music, the movies. I was curious as the cat, but I'm not dead yet. Which is just a kind of, is like, she's talking about this in a very light tone, but I feel like it's kind of heartbreaking a little bit that she had to make those revelations during her formative years. I feel like that's something that should be encouraged your whole life, but I digress. I did not raise her. I do think it's great that Katy, despite like the lessons that were pummeled into her in her childhood and pushed back from her parents as an adult, still had the courage to explore her gift for music, as she puts it, and her interest in the world in her own way, not in the way that she was taught to. And it doesn't mean she's left behind everything her parents taught her. Like, she's carried some religious beliefs with her throughout her life. You know, she's expressed some discomfort around the Lord's name being used in vain, and she's got a tattoo, I think it's on her wrist, that just says Jesus. But my point is that she's allowed herself to be more than that. Like, she didn't just want to be this religious conservative girl. It didn't align with her, and so she let herself break free of those shackles. She's allowed herself to decide independently, you know, what her true beliefs are, and she's let herself learn about people and cultures and religions outside of her own, and I respect that. But following a little bit more about the timeline here, following the release of Katy's debut contemporary Christian album all the way back in 2001, Katy moved to LA, changed her name from Katy Hudson to Katy Perry to avoid confusion with the actress Kate Hudson, and she continued to make her way in music, but secular music this time. She dropped the religious stuff. She was like, this is not working. Sick of it. And Katy was no overnight success. It took a couple of years, but in 2007 she was signed to Capitol Records. And then honestly it was for the best that it took a while, because by the time of her eventual explosion onto the pop scene in 2008, Katy was no longer this like teenage contemporary Christian singer. No, Katy was a whole adult. She was 24 years old and she was an impassioned pop star, quite the 180 from what she used to be. Now, Katy, she collaborated with producers like Greg Wells, Max Martin, and Dr. Luke, amongst others, on her album One of the Boys, which was her, I guess, her debut album as Katy Perry. On that album, she independently wrote 3 songs and co-wrote on the rest of them, so she had a hand in making her music. And this album, this One of the Boys album, was inarguably more successful than the debut album that she'd released as Katy Hudson. I'm talking about them like they're 2 different people, but they kind of are. But this was the album, One of the Boys, that contained hits like Waking Up in Vegas, Hot and Cold, Thinking of You, and of course I Kissed a Girl, everything we know her for, everything we love Katy Perry for. That's what you get for waking up in Vegas. Thanks for letting me know. One of the Boys also featured the song You're So Gay, which was actually her very first single. Very bold choice. But it was released in 2007 before her album even came out, and it's a bit like Dumb and Poetic by Sabrina Carpenter, if you've heard that, except instead of making fun of an ex-love interest for being like dumb and poetic, as making fun of an ex-love interest for being gay but not even liking boys. I guess the underlying message being that it's because they're so in love with themselves, she's saying that. I don't know. It opens with I hope you hang yourself with your H&M scarf while jerking off to Mozart. So that dials in on the fact that this was clearly meant to be like a tongue-in-cheek fuck you anthem, I think. And some people really enjoyed it. They felt it was quite humorous, really liked it. Others did not appreciate it very much. But Katy defended herself and the song. She did an interview with Out.com in which she said, I think they'll get it and embrace it. It's an anthem for the power of the people. Anybody who's been broken up with and wants to get over a guy, the song is just emotionalizing my ex. There's no negative connotation. I always have a great sense of humor in life and in my songs. I think that when people hear it, they're empowered by it. And I've mentioned this just briefly because I think it ties into what we're going to talk about in a second. So funnily enough, growing up restricted and also without much in the way of money, it sort of lit a fire under Katy, actually, because she was like, I'm going to make it. I'm not going to go through this for the rest of my life. And that really worked out for her. Like that fire that was lit under her, it drove her. And it's kept driving her, but it's kind of stopped working out for her. Hear me out. Katy, from 2008 to like the 2010s, I guess, she just released hit song after hit song, albeit quite sparsely. And she's now a mother herself. She gave birth to a daughter a couple years ago that she shares with Orlando Bloom, and she is just head over heels for their wee girl. She absolutely loves her daughter. It's clear that she wants to be the best person and the best mother that she can be for the sake of her daughter. But something, despite her happiness and her success in life, something just lurks in the background for Katy Perry, and that something is an ugly little blob called insecurity. Katy spoke sort of about this. She said, I could play the Super Bowl and didn't feel enough. I always felt I wasn't good enough, and there is this desire to prove, and that is the gas. After 30, the gas starts to burn, and you have to get out of the burning car alive, so it turns on you if you don't deal with it. I want to do it for my daughter, my family, and my partner. You don't see a lot of grandma pop stars, but I want to be one of them. A lot of people don't get out alive in our business, so it's about using that pain and turning it into something profound, which was apparently said on Gwyneth Paltrow's podcast entitled Goop, by the way, which is on par with naming your podcast Moist. Like, why would you make me say that? I can barely speak as it is, and you got me wasting my breath to say Goop? Really? Goop? That's what you want me to say? But either way, I think that desire to prove herself and to maintain her high standing in the pop space, even now that her golden era has sort of passed, has led Katy Perry to choose some unideal paths, I guess you could call them. Because she's always wanted to convince the world that she is not the sad child that continues to live on inside her. And to do that, she had to fall into the glamorous character of Katy Perry, who was, of course, unstoppable. She was sexy, powerful, fearless. But what goes up must come down, even when you're Katy Perry. Following the release of her album Prism in 2013, which boasted chart toppers like Raw and Dark Horse and Unconditionally, Katy just seemed to lose some of her ability to connect with the pop audience, I guess. She has been unable to pen a lyric equivalent to Do You Ever Feel Like a Plastic Bag again, to the dismay of fans. But that's for a good reason, right? It's because she wants to dig deeper and unlock more meaning in her songs. And so her album Witness, released in 2017, saw Katy's first attempt at releasing purposeful pop. Katy chose her song Chained to the Rhythm, which is a commentary piece about the mindless consumption of pop music and avoidance of real world issues, to be a single, which was purposeful pop, and she chose that to go out alongside two catchy but pretty generic pop songs, which is a bit ironic, but it's showbiz, baby. Girls gotta eat. I get it. Now, some listeners really appreciated Chained to the Rhythm, but it fell flat for a lot of other people who found it underwhelming, boring, bad. It seems like people just don't seem to care about who Katy Perry is or what she has to say beyond her almost cartoonish, like bright, bubbly, that bubblegum pop persona. And I think that's just a result of, she's leaned so hard into that persona of Katy Perry that it's all the public have come to expect from her, because it's all they really know her for. And by the sounds of Katy's purposeful pop, it's also all she knows of herself, really, when it comes to her work anyway, because I think Endless Scroll puts it best. They wrote about the hollow nature of Katy Perry's purposeful pop, which is a mouthful. Say that 10 times fast. The hollow nature of Katy Perry's purposeful pop. Katy Perry's purposeful pop. Katy Perry's purposeful pop. It's not that hard. But they said that Witness is an album that shows an artist desperate to change, but with no actual goal, which was pretty on the nose. So public reception of this album, Witness, was not fantastic, and becoming less successful was not on Katy Perry's bucket list, okay? She had nothing to check off when this happened. She was like, oh, what do I do? I mean, this is from like a casual onlooker who has done very surface level research into Katy Perry, but it just seems like after that she sort of started running around like a headless chicken a little bit, and the head has yet to be stitched back on. She's still kind of running around, just in circles, lost. Most recently in 2024, Katy released her album 143, on which she stuck to her guns. Good for her on the whole purposeful pop path. She included songs such as Artificial, which has lyrics that read, who's gonna save us from losing our minds? Oh, you're so dangerous. Devil in Disguise, which, oh God, I'm sure that had Mary Hudson sobbing with her head in her hands because her daughter said the D word. Devil, no. But then Katy goes on to say, you got me diving deep in your system. I'm just a prisoner in your prison. You got me hooked on your algorithm. Are you real or artificial? So what's the deal, huh? Which I think obviously is commentary on our overuse and over-reliance on apps and social media platforms in the modern day. But alongside that, of course, I couldn't speak about this album without mentioning this single that we all know and no, we all know it. We are aware of the existence of this song. It's Woman's World. Yay. But this song, you might have heard it, boasts the lyrics, sexy, confident, so intelligent. She is heaven sent, so soft, so strong. She's a winner, champion, superhuman, number one. She's a sister. She's a mother. Open your eyes. Just look around and you'll discover you know. It's a woman's world and you're lucky to be living in it. So Woman's World, if you couldn't guess from the lyrics, is a woman empowerment anthem, and it was not well received. They called it regressive, they called it out of touch, they commented on the fact that the music video seems to be catering to the male gaze more than you'd expect from a song about female empowerment, kind of giving it's a woman's world but men pay my bills, if you will. But Katy's perspective here was, she said, we're just kind of having fun, being a bit sarcastic with it. It's very slapstick and very on the nose. With the set, it's like, we're not about the male gaze, but we really are about the male gaze. And listen, some viewers might really jive with that message, but they are not the vocal majority from what I've heard. And this is what I was talking about. I feel like the dialogue here and now is so similar to the dialogue about You're So Gay back in like 2007, 2008, because that song was also meant to be empowering with the whole satirical video and everything. And I don't know, maybe empowerment is just not really Katy's thing. Some people seem to like her attempts at it and others just really do not. But I mean, she's had Raw, she's had Fireworks, so I don't know. Either way, it does seem like Katy Perry's a little bit out of touch to me, I'll admit it. Which I don't think is entirely her fault as far as public image goes, because I'm sure she has people for that. But I do wonder if her upbringing has always made her feel just a little detached from the rest of the world in a way, because she apparently moved around a lot, which I know can make it difficult for children to learn to develop lasting relationships, if that makes sense. And then she had very strict parents, which could have given birth to a bit of a rebellious streak within her that seems sort of weird to the average onlooker, because she's not that crazy, but like it's crazy to her. And I mean, listen, I wasn't raised in a very religious household. I can't really speak on it, but I just imagine that it could shape your worldview in a way that doesn't really connect with the majority of people outside of that religious community that you're familiar with. Katy was very sheltered, is what I'm trying to say, and now she seems to have an awkward footing in the world, so I'm just connecting those points in her life, but that's my observation. I have no idea what I'm talking about. And I don't mean to excuse her from any undesirable behaviors in saying that. I just think that so many behaviors become a lot clearer in reasoning when you attach them to a person's upbringing. Like, otherwise you've got the symptom, right, but you can't do much about the symptom if you don't have the diagnosis. I don't know if that makes any sense. But in terms of Katy's career, let's get back on track. It's like Katy's trying to revert back into a space that she aged out of like a decade ago by sort of bringing back that whole glamorous bubblegum pop girl image. But she's also being vocal about the fact that she has grown out of that point in her career, because she's like, I want to make purposeful pop now. So the puzzle piece just does not fit. But Katy doesn't know which puzzle piece does fit. What does the public want to see from Katy Perry? Who knows? Katy Perry certainly does not. But she'd like to figure it out. And she really has been trying to figure it out, bless her. In an attempt to like claw her way back to being as popular and well loved as she was back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. She even reignited a partnership with a producer that ended up contributing greatly to the backlash that she faced for her most recent album, 143. Because Katy Perry, purposeful pop star who wants to empower women, mother to a daughter, chose to work with Dr. Luke. And this choice pretty much invalidated every ounce of purpose in her pop album, because Dr. Luke was publicly accused by 2000s pop goddess Kesha of being wholly inappropriate in their professional relationship. According to Wikipedia, in October 2014, Kesha sued Dr. Luke for sexual assault and battery, sexual harassment, gender violence, emotional abuse, and violation of California business practices, which had occurred over 10 years working together. And this is obviously a very, very brief description from Wikipedia, like I said, but Kesha was heavily supported by the public and by others in the industry. And so as a result, Dr. Luke was essentially blacklisted. Since being accused of such heinous acts, he is obviously a very controversial figure. So the kickback that Katy Perry received for working with a guy like that on a female empowerment album was huge, especially because, I mean, she did stop working with him. She didn't work with him in 2017 for her album Witness. She didn't work with him on her next album, Smile, which came out around COVID times, but then she dragged him back into the loop for her women empowerment anthem. Why? I'm not sure. I don't even know if she's sure. She was asked about her choice to work with him on the Call Her Daddy podcast, and this is the answer she gave.
I know a lot of people have expressed disappointment and were really upset that you decided to involve Dr. Luke on this album. Why did you choose to work with him? Look, I understand that it started a lot of conversations, and he was one of many collaborators that I collaborated with, but the reality is it comes from me. The truth is I wrote these songs from my experience of my whole life going through this metamorphosis, and he was one of the people to help facilitate all that, one of the writers, one of the producers, and I am speaking from my own experience. Like when I speak about Woman's World, I speak about feeling so empowered now as a mother, as a woman, giving birth, creating life, creating another set of organs, a brain, a heart. I created a whole ass heart, and I did it, and I'm still doing it, and I'm still a matriarch, and feeling really grounded in that. That's where I'm speaking from. Yeah. And so I created all of this with several different collaborators, people that I've collaborated with from the past, from Teenage Dream era, all of that.
It's giving I worked with him because I did. It's giving dodging the question. It's giving I made a bad decision, but I can't really talk about it because I'd like to salvage the album. It's giving I'm a boss lady, I grew a boss baby. Let's talk about that instead. And understandably, none of this has gone down well. In this day and age, viewers are just so sick of PR talk and inauthenticity and that lack of transparency that celebrities so often have, that I genuinely think that if she just owned her decision as tactfully as possible, she would have come out less scathed. And that's the point that Katy's at right now. She went from being one of the biggest artists in the world, like dominating the pop charts, to being a bit of a laughingstock as far as the general public is concerned. Just for now, Katy's image is not fantastic. So what did we learn? I always get carried away. I'm so sorry. I just like to learn about people. I like to know where they come from and where they go. Always on the lookout for Cotton Eye Joe. But I brushed over Katy's feud with Taylor Swift, Left Shark, her space adventures. Like we could have been here all day. You should be thanking me. What we learned, which is actually relevant though, is that Katy Perry, for the first few years of her career in music, or the first year or so, was actually Katy Hudson. That's what she went by. It was only when she went through the La La Land machine that she became Katy Perry, girl kisser, whipped cream producer, pop star. And to reiterate, Katy decided against keeping the name Katy Hudson professionally in order to avoid being confused with the well-known actress Kate Hudson. And so in 2002, Katy took on her mother's maiden name professionally and she became known as Katy Perry, at the expense of the poor Australian fashion designer Katy Perry. And shockingly, we don't know as much about Katy Perry as we know about Katy Perry because Katy Perry is a global pop star and Katy Perry is not. Are you following? Hopefully you are, because we're about to introduce the second Katy Perry in today's Yap Sesh. I still don't really know what I make. I'm like deep dive, unpacking, chat. From here on, I think what I'll do is I'll refer to Katy Perry as Catherine or Catherine Perry, because Catherine is actually Katy Perry's birth name, and from what I've gathered, this fashion designer, Katy Perry, her birth name is Katy Perry. K-I-E Perry. K-A-T-I-E Perry. Like that's not her nickname. Katy isn't short for Catherine or Katrina or chamomile tea. Her name is just Katy. So we'll call her Katy and Katy Perry Catherine. I hope that makes sense, but not much is known publicly about this Katy Perry, the fashion designer Katy Perry's upbringing or her life. And even if it was, I mean, she's much less of a public figure, so I'd be hesitant to share it regardless. Like, I'm interested in digging into and understanding this public feud that Katy had with Catherine, but I'm not keen on doxing her. But this is what I learned about her, courtesy of her social media pages, her website, and Wikipedia. Some of this could be true or it could not be. I can't really confirm anything, but this is what I've gathered. So it sounds like Katy was born in London and then she sort of traveled around with her mother and her father and eventually they settled in Australia. And I think she grew up there in Sydney, Australia, because she does have an Australian accent.
Hello, it's Katy Perry here, live from our production house here in Sydney.
But then looking deeper, it looks like she studied in Australia and then maybe worked in London, so she may have continued to move around a bit. I'm not entirely sure.
I travelled the world growing up, so we used to move countries every 18 months to 3 years. And I think it's because Sydney was our home. My parents divorced when I was 12, and this came back and helped put us, as the three of us, back together again.
But what I do know is that her bloodline seems to have a penchant for fashion, I guess you could say. Her great-grandfather was a wool merchant, and then her mother worked closely with the Benetton brothers, which I had no idea who they were, but it looks like they were brothers who founded a global fashion company in 1965, and then after she worked with them, Katy's mother went on to establish her own label, I think in the 1970s. And Katy's mum, her accolades apparently include providing clothes for Paul McCartney and Princess Diana, which I cannot confirm because I have no idea who Katy Perry's mother is.
I have a huge amount of grit, determination, and probably a dose of stubbornness thrown into that. And I think that comes from having grown up with an incredibly strong mum, a single mum who I've seen the way she goes about her life. She's an entrepreneur. It's in my DNA. You know, my great-grandfather was actually a wool merchant.
But Katy Perry developed her own passion for fashion, and she indulged in that passion by undertaking studies at the FBI Fashion College in Sydney, Australia, at which I can only assume that she learned how to make stylish garments for the agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, because otherwise I have no idea what FBI stands for. Then after that, Katy entered the working world as a stylist. She dabbled in being a manager and a buyer at some fashion stores, and finally, after building up her skills in the industry, Katy followed in her mother's footsteps to launch her very own label, donned with her own name, Katy Perry, in 2006 or 2007. I've seen both. It may have been conceptualized in 2006 and then started in 2007. I actually have no idea, but I know for sure that on the 2nd of May 2007, Katy snagged the domain name katyperry.com.au. And Katy spoke of the work that went into the creation of her business years later with, she was on a current affair, and she said,
It is really hard, as most people with small businesses would know. You know, we are the backbone of Australia, but it is a hard slog. And I started off padding to markets, like you said. I've always been self-funded. Blood, sweat and tears have gone through building this business and this label.
So Katy's label, it began as, and it remained over time, a sustainable basics collection. It was aimed to satisfy the needs of everyone, like old or young, tall or short, of any size and shape. You can buy from the Katy Perry brand. And there was this overall, like, ultimate goal of mitigating harm to the planet with these clothes. A quote from the Katy Perry website reads, "We don't just create clothing, we create environmental impact. For every piece sold, we actively contribute to global restoration, planting trees and rescuing plastic from our oceans. Our dedication goes beyond zero harm. We aim to regenerate and heal." In 2003, Katy claimed that within 6 months, the Katy Perry label had planted 100 trees, rescued 487 plastic bottles from the ocean, and saved 0.3 tons of carbon. And it's so good to hear of someone using even their small impact for good, because you can write stuff off and be like, oh, I'm barely doing anything. Like, I've got this small company, but she's not writing anything off. She's taking full responsibility, and she's using her platform, no matter the size, for good. Not prioritizing profit or mass production, but care for the environment and care for the people living in it. And I think that's cool. So Katy Perry, she promotes quality over quantity. She makes an effort to be transparent with buyers, and she uses sustainable and renewable fabrics for her clothes, such as merino wool. Despite the existence of temptation in the form of like cheaper prices and stuff for production overseas, she's really particularly proud of the fact that all of her items are 100% made in Australia, and that reduces the carbon footprint of her business, and it also creates jobs locally. And Katy loves it. Katy loves that she can be hands-on during all phases of production. She likes that she's able to create relationships with that ease that proximity provides, and she likes that she can witness the process of creation at a whim. You know, she can stop by the production factory whenever she wants. A paragraph on the Katy Perry website, it reads, "At Katy Perry, we believe fashion can be a force for good. Since 2006, we've been pioneering a transformative approach to clothing that honors both people and the planet. Our mission is to redefine fashion as a catalyst for positive change, creating comfortable, travel-friendly garments that tell a story of sustainability, ethical production, and genuine care." Which I think, again, is a great mission. Even though my secondhand shop and ass sheds a tear at the price of the garments on her website, I definitely have respect for the brand mission. I appreciate that the prices are high to reflect the quality of the pieces. You know, the establishment of Katy Perry's very own label was a childhood dream come true for her. She always wanted this.
So look, I've always wanted to be a fashion designer since I was 11 years old. At the time, I was living in Bangkok and wanted to design something for the school dance. So I designed a off-the-shoulder black top with hot pink singlet underneath, and then a hot pink ruffle skirt with black tights. I was fortunate because I was living in Bangkok at the time. I was actually able to have that made. And I remember walking into that school dance just feeling so confident, and my shoulders were back, and I knew I could do anything. And it was a reminder of the power of clothing. And that's something that my brand is actually about and that stands for. It's the whole idea is that you put clothing on and you feel really good about yourself. Nothing is digging in. Nothing is saying you're not thin enough. You're too fat. You're not the right shape. These are clothes that you put on and they actually embrace whatever shape you are. Big, small, wide, petite, any shape. So it really started from my foundations back when I was just 11 years old.
And Katy, to this day, she soaks up the enjoyment of customer satisfaction. It's one of the best things in life. Under the section, best part of what I do on the Katy Perry website, it states, seeing a customer come out of the dressing room looking and feeling amazing. I get such a thrill when a customer comments on how much they love a piece in the collection. Beyond personal satisfaction, Katy's love and drive for her craft has been recognised by others. That recognition led her to become a finalist in the fashion, the sustainable product, and the making a difference categories for the Oz Mumpreneur Awards in 2022, and it also earned her a nomination for the Women Changing the World Awards in 2023. Acknowledging her nomination for the former, Katy wrote, "The environment that my children and future generations will live in matters immensely to me, and my business exemplifies that. My kids are learning about sustainability and small business by watching me. I have sent emails while holding a sleeping baby, replied to customer queries while pushing a swing, and visited my production house with kids in tow. Now they're getting a bit older, 6 and 3, we've recently launched a kids range, which they are a part of. I think it's a wonderful example of entrepreneurship for them to be exposed to from such a young age." And for the latter, Katy shared, "I believe the success comes from continuing to push boundaries and challenge the status quo. Don't give up and keep believing in the impact you want to make." So Katy has seen plenty of success during her many years in business, but there's something, this agitating, grating voice that has lingered in the background for many years. And that is the polarizing figure that is Catherine Perry, as we know her, Katy Perry, the pop star, who just happens to have the same name as Katy Perry and also just happens to have a much bigger platform. And also she probably comes up in the search results every time someone tries to find katyperry.com.au. Must be so annoying. I mean, the sheer disrespect of Catherine coming up as the first photo when you search for Katy Perry fashion designer is unbelievable. I thought that they were twins, Katy Perry and Katy Perry at first, but no. That's just the wrong Katy Perry. This is what the actual Katy Perry looks like, the fashion designer. Not like that. How rude. How very misleading. But Google isn't Katy's biggest issue with Catherine. I think she'd be happier if it was. But the thing is that these two Katys, Katy Perry and Katy Perry, have been forced to coexist for quite some time, and they've just never quite managed to do that in harmony. All the way back to 2008, when both of them were sort of establishing their careers. You know, Katy was opening her fashion shop online, and Catherine was gearing up for her very first worldwide tour, which was called the Hello Katy Tour. Clever, right? Like Hello Kitty, but Hello Katy. Oh. All the way back then, this name clash presented a problem. And let me explain. So it's important to note that Katy, the fashion designer, had applied to trademark Katy Perry in association with clothes in Australia on the 29th of September 2008, and that was entered into the registry on the 21st of July 2009. And prior to that, my understanding is that Catherine Perry had trademarked her name, Katy Perry, in the US, probably in association with like being a pop star. I don't know what you meant to register that under, but I think she did that in like 2002. But then at the same time that Katy was establishing her brand in Australia, Catherine's management team was working with an organization called Bravado on producing branded Catherine Perry merchandise, and that went live on the website katyperry.shop.bravadousa.com and on Catherine's website on the 24th of September 2009. So everything is happening, like Katy Perry and Katy Perry are moving and pretty much in sync with each other. But what kind of issue could possibly be brewing here, you may ask? See, if you're anything like me, your very rudimentary understanding of trademarks might lead you to believe that there's no issue here. So we've got Katy Perry and Katy Perry. One spelled with a Y, who is in the business of being a pop star in the US, and then another one spelled with an IE, who is a fashion designer in Australia. There is quite literally no crossover. Like, their names are same but different. Their trades are worlds apart, and they are also worlds apart. So how could this be a problem? I really did not get the big deal. But the thing is that Catherine Perry, like most artists do, she does in fact dabble in the art of fashion, if you could call it that. I mean, come on, if you go to a concert and you don't leave with some merchandise, like an ugly expensive t-shirt that you'll only ever wear to advertise the fact that you attended the concert of this artist that you're a fan of, did you even go to the concert? No, t-shirt or it didn't happen. And Katy Perry, she was no stranger to this idea. So of course, she and her team intended on selling merchandise on this world tour they were going on, including at her shows in Australia, which is Katy Perry's turf. Oh, the drama. So upon the realization that a trademark already existed for Katy Perry clothing in Australia, well, okay, I've heard two stories. So at first I read, this was on the University of Auckland's website, I read Katy Perry's lawyers tried to reach an agreement for each party to use their own trademark without legal problems, but the Australian fashion designer said no. So after reading that, I imagine that Catherine's team reached out to Katy and said something along the lines of, hey Katy doesn't want any trouble, but she does want the money of your fellow Australians. So can we please sell Katy Perry's clothing when we visit Australia? And you can just keep selling your Katy Perry clothing and we can all go along our merry way. And then in response, I thought Katy would have said something along the lines of, no. And I thought in hindsight, you know, maybe no was a bit of a silly answer. Maybe we could have let Catherine come in peace, Katy. But then my understanding shifted. This is so confusing. Okay, so I read that Katy had told Mamma Mia, I think this was in like 2024, she said, the singer actually opposed my trademark. We had a battle over it in 2009 and then it was going to court.
Miss Taylor, the fashion designer, receives this letter. She goes to a lawyer that says, well, she might have a case, but it would cost a lot of money, about $20,000. And she said, well, she couldn't afford that. But after some media campaigning, she was able to crowdfund to get a lawyer.
So it sounds like Catherine's manager in May of 2009 was a bit bamboozled when he discovered this Australian Katy Perry trademark that had popped up coincidentally just a few months before Catherine's scheduled arrival in the country, which was in August of 2009. I bet he thought, oh no, this is going to ruin the tour, the world tour. So Catherine's team, they sniffed out something suspicious, and what did they do? They opposed Katy Perry's trademark. They did do that, and they did it on the basis that they said that basically Katy might seek to benefit from Catherine's growing reputation. Which, to be fair, okay, listen, I'm no lawyer. I know basically nothing about legal proceedings, but when I first read that, I thought it sounded like a bit of a dick move. And I thought that because, of course, I know Katy Perry, the fashion designer's whole background. But removing that knowledge from the equation, it is quite reasonable, I think, considering the timing of it all, that Catherine's team would have thought that Katy maybe had heard of this upcoming pop star Katy Perry, and so she took the opportunity to capitalize on the similarity of their names. She's like, I'm gonna start a business using this name. I'm a genius. Now, Katy, I'm not saying she would have been any the wiser. Like, I'm not blaming her, but I will admit that the developments that she was making in her own business coincided just a little too well with the movements in Catherine's career for her team to not consider it to be a bit suspicious. That's what I'm seeing happening. And it was simultaneously when Catherine's team sent that cease and desist letter that they sent to Katy in an attempt to foil the registration of her trademark, I read that they also went ahead and applied to trademark the name Katy Perry, Katy with a Y of course, in association with live music, recorded music, and clothing. But their application was consequently rejected due to its similarity to the existing Katy with an IE, Perry, trademark in Australia. So in order to be approved, Catherine's team had to remove their intention to sell clothing from their application, then it went through without a hitch. And now, sorry, this is kind of convoluted, but while that was undergoing approval, in return to being reached out to by Catherine's team, Katy apparently sent a link to a YouTube video to Catherine via email in which she wanted to communicate with her directly without all the team bullshit. And in this video, she expressed her desire for both of them, both the Katys, to be able to achieve their greatest dreams in harmony. She said basically, you're a singer, I'm a designer, we're both just girls following our dreams, reach out to me, Catherine. But spoiler alert, Catherine did not. Catherine did not in fact reach out to Katy, and Katy said that Catherine actually went on to say some, quote, really horrible things about Katy, which we'll touch on in just a moment.
So I sat in court with like a tear going down my face, hearing some of the horrible things that this singer has said about me personally. It was really upsetting.
But then back to the timeline, it sounds like, for reasons I am not totally clear on, Catherine's team ended up withdrawing their opposition to Katy's trademark, just literally a few hours before it was going to go to court. Instead, they suggested that they come to a mutually satisfactory coexistence agreement. They said, like, we could both exist on the register in peace. And I do think, I'm not sure, but I think this was a PR choice. What it sounds like to me is that MTV and maybe some other media companies, they caught a whiff of the drama that was about to unfold. And so Catherine's team, they threw in the towel. They were like, you know what? Not even worth it. Let's not even bother. And they backed off. I'm kind of inferring this. I know a little bit, but okay. So basically Catherine and her team had a very professional discussion about all of this on email, which was, it was laid out in court documents as follows. The court document that I read, it reads, or the court synopsis, I don't know, sorry. Either way, it says, the primary judge recites a subsequent email dated 16th June 2009 from Mr. Jensen, who was Catherine's manager, to Ms. Hudson, who was Catherine, in which he informs her that Ms. Taylor, which is Katy Perry's married name, has traded under the name Katy Perry since 2007. And he incorrectly informed Miss Hudson that no attempt had been made to keep Ms. Taylor from trading under her name. Then he refers to the tabloid newspapers picking up the story, and he advises her that he will keep her posted. And then it says, Ms. Hudson responded on the 17th of June, so the next day, 2009, with comments suggestive that she had a distinct understanding of the dispute. She said, I say keep me out of it entirely. Make it less important, but release something from management, pretty much stating the facts. Like, from the opening of this email, beside the Katy, to the story part. Those exact words are great. Don't soften it up. Don't apologize. Nothing. Let me know before it does go out, please. And then she said, stupid bitches. I wouldn't have even bothered with this. MTV hadn't picked up this silliness. Dumb bitch. Raw. So glad to see that everyone was taking this seriously. But this is where I really get confused. Now we have the knowledge, right, that Catherine's team did offer a solution to Katy. What could have possibly gone wrong then? Because it sounds like Katy, when she reached out to Catherine, was showing an interest in peaceful cohabitation, and then Catherine's team was like, yeah, we can do that. But I don't know. Katy must have perceived that she and Catherine already had bad blood or something. Yes, that was a reference. Thank you for noticing. Because she did supposedly end up rejecting the offer of peaceful cohabitation made by Catherine's team, and so I'm lost. Once again, I return to my stance that in hindsight, that was maybe not the best decision, because it caused years of turmoil for one Katy. And not the superstar one with tons of money and a huge powerful team behind her. Not her, she was fine. But admittedly, I don't know the terms of this mutually satisfactory agreement that Catherine's management team suggested, so I don't know if it was actually a good deal for Katy, if she could maintain like a fair amount of freedom within her business ventures with what they were proposing. I assume she could, but I don't know. So I can't really say much, and it all sounds very stressful. Honestly, I think battling with a pop star and their team is well above, it's like getting it above most small business owners' heads. So I'm definitely empathetic to Katy here.
This video that I did on YouTube where I actually did a message to her because I was tired and people were coming up to me and saying, oh, I'm sure the singer doesn't even know that this is happening. And so I said, well, she needs to know. And so I did a personal message to her and I just said, look, I'm a fashion designer, you're a singer. You continue being a singer and let me continue being a fashion designer. That's what that video was about. That video, which has been swung around by her team, saying that was me acquiescing. That was me saying, no, you can have the trademark. Rubbish. It was absolute rubbish. It was me saying, you're a singer, you continue being a singer and let me continue being a fashion designer with my brand. I thought I was going to lose my whole business, like blood, sweat and tears. Like I said, self-funded, I was working 3 jobs. So, I'm talking to the media, I'm having to deal with lawyers at the same time of getting very aggressive calls from her team and then thinking I'm going to lose my dream and I haven't done anything wrong. And that's what kept me going and that's what has continued to keep me going is the whole idea that I've done nothing wrong. I did everything that the government has asked me and I've done everything to protect my business, my fashion label, using my own birth name. It's absolutely ridiculous.
But as much as she couldn't have known this at the time, in the absence of a crystal ball, I do think that Katy kind of shot herself in the foot for reasons we will discuss later. But that's if, that is, this whole coexistence agreement claim is grounded in truth. I think the reason I'm so confused is that there are genuinely 2 different narratives floating around about this, because the courts seem to agree that this was attempted by Catherine's team, this peace agreement. They talk about it like it happened. But Katy vehemently denies awareness of such a deal being proposed. In her interview with Mamma Mia, she claimed, I'm not sure what this coexistence agreement is. I saw that in the judgment and I was like, what are they talking about?
So the fact that she fought me for the trademark, she applied for one and it was dismissed. And during this period, never once did anybody of her team approach me. Never once did they come and say, hey, we know you have the trademark. Could we come up to some kind of agreement? What they did, and they admitted they took a calculated risk that I would not be in a position to ever fight them because I'm a small business and, for my feelings, because I'm a mum, and continue and breach the trademark and breach Australian law. Why did they at never one point over all of these years approach me and say, hey, we actually want to sell t-shirts or pajamas using your trademark, do you agree to that? Never once. But they've admitted that they took a calculated risk that I wouldn't be able to do anything about it. I mean, the way I've been treated, I'm not too sure that their outcome would have been very favourable towards me, but potentially, but the fact that they didn't, not once, and still, nobody has approached me. She's never approached me. It's still, quite upsetting.
So, it sounds like we're all confused. Okay, but I just want to make something very clear before we head into like a deeper discussion about what happened in the courts. I'm not making this video to trash anybody. I hope everyone in the aftermath of this case is doing well. I'm approaching this topic from a genuine interest in exploring the whole ordeal, nothing more, nothing less. I don't want anyone to suffer. I don't think anyone's stupid or ridiculous. Like, I don't want to make it seem like I'm not egging people on, like like I'm shitting on anyone. I don't want to make it seem like that. I just wanted to look into what happened, and this is what happened from what I have read anyway. Now, you may remember that Catherine's team did have to yield to Katy Perry's trademark in Australia, so they therefore they failed to trademark the name Katy Perry as it relates to clothing in Australia, I guess you could put it. But did they sell clothing in Australia? Oh, you bet your bottom dollar they did. In 2009, 2011, all of the subsequent tours, visits to Australia, Catherine sold branded merchandise at her concerts. Of course she did. And then on top of that, in stores, they sold Katy Perry clothes, they sold Katy Perry hats, Katy Perry shoes, Katy Perry handbags, oh, you name it. You want Katy Perry stuff, we got it. And then Katy, the fashion designer, was not impressed by this behaviour. She's quoted as saying, I would have friends send me photos of like pajamas at Target and shoes and Maya with the brand Katy Perry, and they said, don't you have the trademark for clothes? She's breaching your trademark. And I was like, I'm not in the position to do anything. You know, I'm a small business. I've got 2 little kids. And again, I didn't really understand this because I thought that it was like illegal. Like I figured they just would not sell Katy Perry stuff if they didn't have the trademark for it. And it did, like, I read this and I was like, well, Catherine's team is kind of antagonizing Katy, right? They're like belittling her trademark. So I get that. But then I also had this other thought where I was like, I don't know, it raised the question for me of why Katy felt like they couldn't coexist in the first place. Genuine query, because what the Mamma Mia article states is that Katy saw an issue with the musician's merchandise encroaching on her designs. And I understand that I have sympathy for the fact that Katy did own that trademark, Katy Perry, and she felt like it was blatantly being disrespected and disregarded by this ever-growing pop star. But zooming out a little bit, it's not like there was a chance really that Catherine's merch and Katy's clothing line would be confused, would be mistaken for one another. Like, their designs weren't similar, I don't think. Katy's kind of simplistic, conscious comfort, luxury loungewear style is in total contrast to the mass-produced, like, in-your-face, heavily branded merchandise that Catherine was selling. So I don't know.
The Australian decides to sue the pop singer. Tell me about that.
Yes, a bit of a David and Goliath story, but you have to understand that it didn't really matter who sued who. The fact was they didn't have an agreement that they wouldn't sue each other, so both of them continuing to sell clothing with that mark meant they were both vulnerable to litigation. So if I had been Miss Taylor's lawyer, I probably would have done the same thing. If I wasn't able to negotiate with Katy Perry's team, I would have, also advised that you kind of need this thing settled, otherwise, you might be liable. You can't continue going on like this with the vulnerability of litigation hanging over your head.
And like I said, I kind of thought like, well, it's illegal, so they shouldn't be doing it. But as far as that goes, gtlaw.com.au, they outlined that the reason that Catherine's team made the decision to go ahead with selling clothing merchandise in Australia was, at that stage, the singer and her management team were aware of the trademark infringement risk, but they considered that there was no risk of anyone in Australia being confused because of the singer's earlier adoption and their stronger reputation in the trademark. And it says as well, the singer and her team also did not receive any complaint from the designer during the singer's Australian concert tour in August of 2009, at which Katy Perry branded merchandise was sold, which led them to believe that the issue had been dropped by the designer. So as far as Catherine's team was concerned, they were coexisting in peace. There was no issue here, there was no confusion amongst the public, but beneath the surface, a storm was brewing within Katy. She felt, I think Katy felt as if she was being walked all over by this big pop star who had like stolen her name and muddied her brand identity, and she was not going to have it forever, especially not because she came first, right? In her mind, she started her brand first because Katy Perry appeared in like 2008. She conceptualized this in 2006. I mean, even going right back to the start, Katy Perry was born in 1980. Catherine was born in 1984. Finders, keepers, losers, weepers. You snooze, you lose. And Katy Perry in Australia was also actually born with that name. She was born Katy Perry.
I am Katy Perry, the real Katy Perry. That's right, I was born Katy Perry.
And Katy Perry had every right to trade under the name that she was known by. But so did the other Katy Perry, so did Catherine. None of that changed anything. A decade after the Katys first found themselves in hot water together, the pot boiled over, and Katy sought out a lawyer. The Mamma Mia article states that in 2019, through litigation funding, Katy found a lawyer who told her, let's stick up for Australian law. She is breaching your trademark. And legal proceedings, I mean, we all know they take ages to unfold. So it wasn't until 4 years later in 2023 that the issue actually went to the federal court.
As far as I thought, that we would send a letter, hey, you've breached our trademark. And they had admitted it. They've admitted that they breached the trademark. I was shocked that it dragged on for all these years.
And I'm going to kind of breeze past this decision, but they made the ultimate call that, according to KKO lawyers, this is what they said, Catherine had infringed on the Katy Perry mark by advertising Katy Perry clothing for the Australian market on social media, at Australian pop-up stores, and during Australian tours. The cross-claim by Hudson and Katy Perry Inc., which they were arguing that Katy Perry's trademark should have never been allowed to have been registered in the first place and it should be cancelled. So they were arguing that, and they said this was also dismissed by the court. While Justice Markovic did acknowledge that Ms. Hudson had obtained a reputation in the Katy Perry mark prior to Ms. Taylor's application to register the Katy Perry mark. At the time, it was not in relation to clothing, but in the entertainment and music industry. And we'll expand on these ideas later. I'll tell you that they didn't hold up very well, but as for this initial outcome, I mean, Katy was overjoyed. She was absolutely chuffed. Her trademark had been honoured. Catherine would no longer be allowed to sell branded clothing to an Australian market. She won.
What do you think that was said on your behalf that got you the win?
I don't think it was actually even anything that I said. I think it was just the facts of the case.
Katy spoke about this with A Current Affair. She said,
I am absolutely over the moon. I actually felt like the whole world had come off my shoulders.
But then Catherine and her associated entities appealed these initial decisions on the grounds of, quote, the federal court's findings on joint tortfeasorship. I don't really know how to say that, but it's joint liability for infringement, basically. Scope of registered goods and Catherine and her associated entities' defences to the alleged trademark infringement. So obviously the reason I've glossed over this whole court case is because the federal court's ruling was subsequently overturned due to Catherine Perry's established reputation by the time of the events beginning to unfold in 2008. They were like, we need to take another look at this because the results don't seem quite right. And so this led to the 2024 High Court case between Katy Jane Taylor, which again is Katy Perry's married name, and Killer Queen LLC, Catherine Elizabeth Hudson, and Katy Perry Inc. Now, prior to this court case commencing, Katy released a video to her followers on Instagram in which she outlined the situation at hand from her perspective, and she also spoke about the upcoming case on A Current Affair. So I'll play some clips for you, just whatever I think is relevant.
I'm reeling, to be honest. I feel like it's back to the beginning and back to having to take calls from lawyers and spend time away from my business and time away from my little kids, and the emotion and the stress around it. It actually shocked me just how upset I have been. I've done exactly what the government told me to do. Register your business name, get an ABN, get a trademark. I've done all those things. And that's why this case has always felt so wrong, because I've done everything that I was supposed to do. And yet some overseas conglomerate can come to Australia and go, well, I'm bigger, I've got more money, and I'm going to pretty much crush you, is wrong.
So day 2, I'm live outside the courtroom. Yesterday was a big day. It was really hard to refrain and just sit there and listen. Can you imagine sitting and listening to someone spreading lies about you and you can't say anything? You can't say, well, my business was small in 2019 because I was pregnant and then I had 2 kids under the age of 2.5 and I was on crutches. You can't say all of that. And my business was small when I first started. Yes, because fashion is hard and it took me ages to find the right manufacturing. You can't even tell them the reasons behind. It's all blanketed lies, and I had to sit there and listen.
And I think we have successfully established by now that I'm no lawyer, so take everything I say with a grain of salt here, because I just had to interpret this myself. But from what I've gathered from like court transcripts and summaries and descriptions, and I don't know, it sounds like Katy and her lawyer, they set out to prove that each and every time Catherine sold her merchandise in Australia or to an Australian market, so at tour venues, pop-up stores, at Target, at Harris Scarf, Best and Less, even online, both Catherine and her associated entities were infringing on the Katy Perry trademark. That was their argument. And then on the opposing side, Catherine's team were pushing back. They were saying that the Katy Perry trademark should be cancelled. They said it should have never been registered in the first place. So there was a lot on the line here for Katy. She could lose the rights to her brand, essentially.
The lawyers for Ms. Taylor are arguing that they should use their discretion under the Act to allow her to keep her mark, because at the time she registered, while she might have known about Katy Perry, she didn't believe that it would have any kind of confusion with her brand, that she wouldn't be trademarking clothing, that singing and entertainment was different. And the singers' representation are arguing that that's such a common practice that it should be understood that singers would do that.
Now in this battle, the first thing I saw that came up was that it was argued that Catherine technically was not encroaching on Katy's trademark by selling headwear or footwear, since Katy had opted to register a trademark solely in association with clothes. That's all it says. And the judge agreed with this. Katy rebutted. She said that pretty much a person that was ordered to take off their clothes would take off all of the garments on their body, even on their head and their feet. But unfortunately, the scope of her trademark just was not clear in that regard. Like if you look at her trademark, it just says clothes. It doesn't say clothes, footwear, and headwear. So things got off to a bit of a wobbly start for Katy, but yet she fought on. Katy's side argued, according to a Jade.io summary, I have no idea what that website is, but it did make the transcripts a little more understandable for me. It said that the only way the primary judge could have reached her conclusion that Ms. Hudson was acting in good faith was by treating a lack of intention to divert business and a lack of awareness of confusion as being determinative of use in good faith. Ms. Taylor contends that more is required to establish good faith and that this reasoning is contrary to authorities. It continued, Ms. Hudson knew of the registration of the applicant's mark and that the Katy Perry mark was not registered in Class 25 for clothing. Ms. Hudson and the respondents proceeded with the original original plan to sell clothes bearing the Katy Perry mark in Australia. Their action was deliberate in the sense that they did not let the fact of the applicant's mark, Ms. Taylor's mark, stand in their way, but proceeded notwithstanding of that obstacle. They were prepared to, and did, take a risk. Knowing their conduct was infringing conduct, they engaged in what can only be described as a calculated disregard of Ms. Taylor's rights. And again, as solid of an argument as this sounds like it is, this turned out to be a bit of a wobbly point for Katy as well, because the judge determined that actually Catherine and her teams were acting in good faith, and they said that this was due to the fact that essentially during like the developmental and the initial release stages of Catherine's merchandise, both she and her team were entirely unaware of the existence of Katy's trademark in Australia. And prior knowledge, as far as the legal system was concerned, was kind of the nail in the coffin for Katy. This ended up being the main sort of back and forth point of the whole court proceeding from what I could gather. It was the fact that when Catherine adopted and trademarked the name Katy Perry in the United States, which I think she did in 2002, she obviously had no knowledge of the existence of the Australian fashion industry worker Katy Perry, nor did she know of the fact that Katy Perry had future intent to start her own business using her own name. And then like over the course of the years between 2002 and 2008, when Catherine had her first big hit single, Catherine was working under the name Katy Perry. She was putting on shows, developing merchandise, and she was generally establishing herself in the public consciousness in America. It's still none the wiser to the fact that an Australian-based Katy Perry would take issue with Catherine making herself a public figure in Australia as well, essentially. And then, as soon as Catherine's team did become aware of Katy's trademark, they took action, right? They took legal action, but then not only that, they also made an attempt to establish an agreement that would allow both businesses to trade because they had that confidence, right? They were like, we're not going to inhibit each other's abilities to make honest sales. And Catherine's manager shared he thought that if anything, he considered there would be a possibility that the public might actually confuse Katy's clothes with Catherine's clothes, like that they'd buy it thinking it was Catherine's clothing, which would in turn benefit Katy, right? Because Catherine's popularity within the Australian market was pretty big. And the judge acknowledged, she said that, you know, within the decade that both Katys were actively trading, no confusion was voiced by buyers. So she concluded in the end that the differences between the respected trademarks are limited, but the consumer faced with the goods in issue, clothes, and giving the matter a moment's reflection, would conclude that the clothes in question did not come from the same source as clothes bearing the Katy Perry pop star mark. But then when the spotlight turned to Katy, things did not go in her favor. And like we spoke about, it's that prior knowledge thing. Because Katy is quoted as saying, you know what I did when I first heard that song? She was talking about I Kissed a Girl. She said, I was like, wow, there's a singer out there called Katy Perry, and I bought the song in my way of supporting her. It's not like her music is my style of music, so I didn't play the song. The only reason I did it was my way of supporting someone who was a singer called Katy Perry. But I never thought I'd be in this position now. I never thought our worlds would collide. Never. As far as I was concerned, she's a singer, I'm a designer. And the quote continues, that's what I don't understand. Why would I have the psychic ability to think that she was going to become a big pop star in 2008? She wasn't. She had that one song. Many people have just one song and then you never hear from them again. How am I supposed to know that when I started my label, there was going to be a singer who was actually named Catherine Hudson and called Katy Perry, that she will come out, that she would be a huge star, and that she would have merchandise? But despite Katy's insistence that she could have never anticipated that this kind of crossover would happen, her initial admission still bit her. In July of 2008, Katy heard the song I Kissed a Girl by Katy Perry for the first time. And then by September of 2008, which is when Katy applied for her trademark, she told the courts that she knew that Catherine was an internationally famous pop star, and she was aware that people in that position typically do go on to sell clothing merchandise. And on top of that, I don't know why, but it was found to be true that on occasion, Katy, quote, this is a quote from one of the synopses, has sought to align herself with Ms. Hudson in order to obtain some reflected benefit, conduct which would only increase the likelihood of consumers potentially being deceived or confused. They also spoke of the fact that the Katy Perry trademark should have never been allowed to have been registered, since Catherine had a reputation in Australia prior to Katy's application being filed. And then they brought up Katy's disapproval of the coexistence offer as well. A paragraph reads, having rejected the offer, Ms. Taylor then chose to commence infringement proceedings against the appellants. In that sense, Ms. Taylor has brought this result on herself. Unfortunately, it is no longer possible to return to the time of peaceful coexistence. And sadly for Katy, it all stacked up against her. It was her prior knowledge, her admittance that she knew of Catherine's pop star status, and the likelihood of pop stars selling clothing merchandise. I mean, all of that, the odds of the case, they just were not in Katy's favour after that. So in the end, Catherine and her team did come out on top. The High Courts ruled that Catherine was actually in the right, with the consideration of public interest and the goal of avoiding confusion, taking into account the significant presence of the brand of the pop star Katy Perry. The conclusion was made that, quote, Ms. Taylor's trademark was not validly registered and the register should be rectified by cancelling its registration. GT Law outlined that the full court ordered the cancellation of the designer's Australian trademark registration, set aside Markovic's earlier orders, including the order restraining Katy Perry Inc. from selling Katy Perry branded clothes in Australia, and ordered the designer to pay the singer's costs of the appeal and the cross appeal. I don't know why. But GT Law, they specified, none of the law sites I came across took any issue with this verdict. Like, they were like, the outcome makes sense. But GT Law noted that the outcome of this appeal serves as a cautionary tale for trademark owners to complete thorough due diligence before investing in a new brand, not only in relation to registered trademarks owned by third parties, but also third-party reputational rights.
I think, some of the takeaways I've got is you have to be organised when you've got a business. Even if you think you're a small fish, the big fish can come after you. You have to get your trademark in order early on. Make sure that any effort that you are putting into any other business, make sure that you've got it and it's yours, because then you have something to fight for later on. And don't give up.
Well, I guess it means that you should probably not brand things with your name. Like, it is, unless you have a very unusual name. I mean, Katy Perry is not a very unusual name, especially for a singer. You wouldn't want to start your business and call it Kylie, knowing that, there's so many famous Kylies out there, or Kim or something like that. It is much better to come up with a made-up word, something that you know is always going to be associated with only you.
I'm sure my retelling of these events was not perfect by any means, but I do hope you get the gist of what happened here and why. But Katy, as you can imagine, was just gutted by this verdict. Things had gone so swimmingly well, so in her favour in the 2023 court battle, that I'm sure this was like a shocking turn of events. And it was soul destroying for her. Like I said, I take no joy in this. This is sad. Katy went on a current affair again, and she agreed that the outcome of her case proves that a trademark isn't worth the paper it's printed on. She went on to say that
it means that I've lost everything. Blood, sweat and tears have gone through building this business and this label, and now today I'm going to lose it all. I was in my showroom looking around at all of my clothes, my merino wool wraps, my tags, my flyers, bags. I can't use the name Katy Perry. All these years that I've been working on the business, my brand reputation, my website, I've lost it all.
Her name's not Katy Perry. I think it is Catherine Elizabeth Hudson. Remind us again, what name were you born with?
I was born Katy Perry.
Well, I can say so much for sisterhood and female empowerment. I would just like to say I will never listen to her music again, in solidarity with you.
Why, thank you.
Katy also voiced apparently that she was not pleased that Catherine didn't make an appearance in court, despite the fact that she was actually in Sydney, Australia, at the time of the case unfolding. Instead, Catherine was spotted at a Taylor Swift concert. And I guess that just made Katy feel like really small. It just highlights, I think, how unimportant this whole disturbance was for Catherine. Like, it was just a bit of a hassle. While for Katy, it shook up her whole life and her whole business. But Katy spoke more on this feeling of being kind of small, and of the aftermath of the situation in general as well. In the Mamma Mia article that we've been referring to, Katy said, I just felt like I'm being constantly slapped in the face. Like I don't matter. Other people are more important. And that's not how I live my life. We all matter. Whether you're a small business or a pop star or a president or a cleaner, we all matter. The order to deregister my business name is an incredibly harsh judgment. I now have 23 days. It's like a ticking time bomb. 23 days to either close my business or rebrand. That's not an easy process, and that's not cheap. It's incredibly expensive. And this is also my busiest time coming at Christmas season. It's pretty overwhelming. I keep telling myself, take it step by step, day by day. And the article closed with Katy expressing her gratefulness for the kindness and the support that she received during such a trying time. As she said, I've seen the darkness, but also the light of humanity. And finally, she lamented, this is an Australian business. It's manufactured here in Sydney. I pay taxes. I've been really let down by the Australian legal system. It's really shocking. And as much as I do feel for Katy, truly I do, I can't, admittedly, pinpoint the exact reason why she felt like she had to undergo court proceedings in the first place. It makes total sense to me that she felt unsettled, but it wasn't affecting her business, I don't think. So then it was a personal matter at that point, technically. I feel like you could have just left that be, and I'm sure she's thought about all of this. So I don't mean this to rub it in. Do you know what I mean? I'm not like, oh, you're so silly. I just genuinely, I don't know if I missed something. I'm not trying to be snarky. Truly, to me, it seems counterintuitive to willingly go head to head against an incredibly wealthy and reasonably powerful musician in the absence of absolute necessity. I wouldn't do it. Again, not trying to be cruel. It's a shitty situation, but the headline, US pop star wins latest trademark battle with Australian fashion designer, was no real surprise to read. I wasn't like, the small business lost. I do feel for Katy though. Truly I do. I just, I maybe had some questions, and so did some others. I saw a comment that shared some similar thoughts to mine on Instagram, and Katy responded. She reiterated, I didn't sue first. The singer came after me in 2009, and she said there wasn't a coexistence agreement. I will be sharing the actual facts about the case shortly, but like I said, the courts made it sound like there was a coexistence agreement. I thought there was no lying in court. I thought they'd probably have a receipt for that. I don't know.
I've had lots of people say that I'm greedy, that I'm doing this for money. I haven't made any money from this. And even if there is a settlement at the end, I've got funding, so a lot of it is going to be eaten up in legal fees. And that's what's also been frustrating when people call me like greedy. It's like, all right, like, how am I greedy? I haven't received 1 cent from this. It's taken its toll on me emotionally. It's taken its toll on my business. I've actually lost money because it means it's been hours and hours of business away from my business, of building my business up.
As of August 2025, I don't know, I was looking at her Instagram page and it seems like she still trades under the name Katy. Hold on, so okay, I checked the trademark for Katy Perry number 1264761, and it's still registered under Katy's name, although it does state court action pending. So Katy did have the option to take her case to High Court, and this is what she said about that.
Look, the thing is now, I look at the name Katy Perry and it makes me feel sick. I don't know if I've got the fight or the will to do that. I'm not sure. Again, I have to gather myself together, kind of dust myself off, and figure out if I can get back into that ring again.
Publicly, Katy is still trading under the name Katy Perry with the same domain name and everything, to the delight of the supporters of her page, like this one who wrote, "The one and only real Katy Perry," which I'm sure caused all the Katy Perry robots out there to cry and short circuit themselves. It's just a funny way to put it. Like, I get what they're saying, but it's a funny way to put it. It boggles my mind that cancelling Katy's trademark was even on the cards, because she said this time and time again, and I do get it. There was obviously no malicious forethought when it came to Katy snagging the trademark, especially at the time that she did. Like, as much as Catherine was a rising star, it's not like she snagged it when Katy was like this huge, like she'd released Firework and Raw and she was this big deal for years. She was barely an up and coming pop star, so I do get it, and she obviously had her own dreams. Like, this wasn't a decision that related to Katy Perry's existence, so it is frustrating that the courts would take that away from her, but it's not that it doesn't make total sense, it's just that this whole thing was unnecessary is the thing that gets me. I'm like, why did this have to happen? Because obviously Catherine wasn't just going to accept that she could no longer monetize clothing, which is a hugely popular form of merchandise in Australia anymore. I don't think she's not just going to lie down and take it, be like, yeah, no, it's fine, I don't want that profit anyway. I don't think I'd bother with hunting Catherine down. If she was happy to coexist with me, I'd be like, shit, her merch has nothing on my merino sweaters anyway, she can go suck it. But I do get why Katy did what she did. I don't want to make it seem like she was totally irrational. Like, I don't know, I think there's a lot of nuance here. A current affair, they sided with Katy Perry, Australian Katy Perry, without wavering once. I respect that, because, like Aussie camaraderie, stick it to the man. But to say this,
pop star Katy Perry has come out swinging again. Her 14-year trademark dispute with an Aussie designer who happens to share the same name has taken another turn. In April, our Katy won the court case. It was a victory for the little guy. But the singer has just landed another blow.
It's a little bit disingenuous, not entirely. Like, this was a legal battle. Catherine and her team did fight. And Catherine also did not speak very respectfully about Katy behind closed doors back in like 2009. But to paint the picture that Catherine was just raining down her force on Katy, like, that's not entirely true. And I get it, it's journalism. You can't really dig too deep into journalism and the wording there. But like, I don't know, like I said, there's some nuance here, and both sides dance this tango. I do understand rooting for the underdog though. I mean, the law can be a bit bizarre. Like, I don't doubt that truly Katy did believe that she was in the right. Like, without a shadow of a doubt, she had the trademark. I mean, at a surface level glance, she was in the right. She had the trademark. She wasn't being a supervillain. She wasn't doing anything crazy. But it's just when you commence legal proceedings, right, things get so deep and they get so convoluted, and the least expected outcomes can end up prevailing. They can end up being the thing that comes out on top. It's just, it is a cautionary tale, like GT Law said, I think. And it's, like I said, no ill wishes here. I don't want to see Katy's business go under. Nothing like that. Or I guess it is under already, because it's down under, get it, in Australia. But I mean, like, genuinely, I hope her small business remains at the level of success that it's always had, at least, because I think she's got an amazing mission going on. Her clothes look great. She seems like a nice lady. And I really hope that nobody's going out of their way to hound Katy on her social medias, like to bring drama to her pages, because it's just not necessary. Trolls are of no use here. This whole decades-long situation, you can imagine how much of a toll it's taken on Katy already. Her business has a great mission. Like I've said, it's doing restorative work for the planet. And that's a better focus to hold into the future. Like, we can leave this whole Katy Perry thing behind us, and we can respect both the Katys for what they're doing, as long as what they're doing is respectable. But Katy herself, you'll be glad to hear, she's keeping a positive demeanor from the looks of things. She's shared photos and videos of her working on her business still very passionately. You can see her having fun with her friends and family on her Instagram pages. She even wrote in one post about taking a trip to Bali with her kids. It was dated June 4th, 2025, and she said, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remove yourself from what doesn't serve you. I believe in standing up for myself, but I also believe in knowing when to step away and protect my peace. This trip isn't about running away, it's about running towards joy. It's about showing my kids that we can transform difficult moments into beautiful memories. It's about choosing ourselves when we need it most. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges to a better version of yourself. To anyone navigating tough times right now, it's not only okay to remove yourself from situations that trigger or hurt you, it's necessary. Protect your soul, guard your energy. You deserve to feel safe and whole. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose peace over proving a point. And like I said, I've said this a million times, but I really do respect Katy. I respect her goals, I respect her grit, and I respect her positivity, and I hope that she goes on to do great things, love her life with her family, love her life as a small business owner. But this was just something I wanted to understand more. Like, I saw it, I came across it on Reddit at first, I think, and I just didn't, it stayed in the back of my mind. I was like, I want to understand what happened. And admittedly, it was kind of difficult. I don't know all this like law jargon, and I was reading the transcripts and I was like, why are they using such big words? But it was very interesting. I hope you found the same thing. Sorry about sorry about the way I've spoken in this video. It hurts to speak, but I need to film. Also, sorry about the background. I tried to move my filming setup because I was like, everyone complains that my room, well, not everyone, I'm so sorry. Some people don't like that my room is dark and it's brighter in here, but there's no real good place to film. So it's just a blank wall. Like, it's a bit sad. You could like, we could put like pictures here, like just in post-production. What do you want? Like a jumping dolphin? We could do that. Would that make things more interesting for you? But do let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below. I think no need to be unnecessarily harsh. Like, I think it can be easy to forget sometimes that stories like this that you'd like read about in the news briefly and whatever, they do involve real people. Obviously, celebrity pop star Katy Perry, who I don't think cares very much about what we say in the comment section here, but fashion designer Australian Katy Perry, like, there's a chance, not saying she will, but there is a chance that she'd come across this video and what you'd want to see if you were in like a situation that had troubled you for over a decade. If you scrolled into the comments on a video talking about it, you probably wouldn't want people to be like tearing you to shreds. So we can discuss and still be like civil. Not that I feel like I have to specify that. Like, I trust you guys. But I'm gonna go back on vocal rest. It's so ridiculous, but I genuinely couldn't talk. I wanted to film this like 2 days ago, but I was talking like this. So it's a pleasure to be back yapping again now that my voice works again. I hope you're doing well. I hope that you enjoyed learning about this. I hope you have a fab day. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, and I will maybe see you in my next video. Okay, bye. Bye. My camera made it to the end again, by the way. Just pointing that out. We're on a roll, guys. We're on a roll.